Okie dokies, artichokies, let's get started. So today we are going to be pretending we're an ELA class and learning some vocab. And the reason we learn this vocab is so that in the future when people are talking about math things, whether it be in higher level math courses in high school or in college, things make sense to you. On a personal note, I did not learn any of this vocab when I was in high school and middle school, and by the time I got to college, I was in a lot of trouble because I didn't actually understand what the professor was saying because I didn't know the words. So we're going to learn some vocab today. For those of you that like to write things down, should be all of you, but for those of you that do, there is a typed out version of this in the lesson, so you don't need to pause the video, but you can if you want to. So the first word we're going to be looking at today is increase. Okay, so increase should be a pretty easy one. Basically, it's to gain or go up. Pretty obvious. Another word we can use for increased is positive. So today, we're going to be taking a look at some scatter plots. And I'm going to ask you, are they increasing? Well, then they're positive. Okay, same idea for decrease. Decrease is to lose or go down. Another word for that is negative. So if we're looking at the scatter plot and you can say it's decreasing, that makes it negative. The first word we're going to talk about that you probably don't know is called a trend. So a trend, you might be familiar with in terms of like a fashion trend, or something is trending on Instagram or trending on TikTok, like a certain dance move is. That is the same idea in math, right? If something is trending on Instagram or TikTok, it's because a bunch of people are doing it, and so it becomes very popular, and now it's the new trend. Same with fashion. If a bunch of people are doing something, it's the new trend. In a scatter plot, if all of the dots seem to be following the same idea, so like for instance, these dots all seem to be moving up, right? Oh, sorry. Then the trend of this scatter plot is increasing or positive, right? Because all the dots seem to be going up. So a trend is basically how are the points all moving and what do they look like in math? Same idea. If all the dots are following something, it's a trend. Just like if everyone on Instagram is doing something, it's trending. Same idea. Okay, so hypothesis. Hopefully you've heard this word before. If you have not, though, then here we go. An hypothesis is when you predict something that will happen before you actually do it. So basically, if you're going to perform an experiment, so your science teacher is going to be like, we're going to dump Mentos in Coca-Cola, right? And hypothesis could be that the Mentos will react with the Coca-Cola and it will go boom. That would be a hypothesis. You would say that before you dump the Mentos in, and if the Mentos in fact made the Coca-Cola go boom, then you'd be correct. If they didn't, then you would be wrong. So hypothesis is just like that. We're going to do a lot of hypothesis in this chapter, because every time, if you recall from the last lesson, when we do a scatter plot, we're doing two sets of data. So just like on the last scatter plot with the odometer reading and the price, I could have asked you to make a hypothesis of whether or not odometer reading and price were connected. And if you said they were, you would have been correct. If you said that they weren't connected, then hopefully the scatter plot would have proved you wrong. So that's what a hypothesis is. So when I ask you in the future, please make a hypothesis before performing this experiment or before creating a scatter plot, that's what I mean. Make a prediction. The next two vocab words, dependent and independent variables, these are tricky. I'll be honest, I did not understand what these words meant until I actually started teaching 8th grade. So let me explain to you independent and dependent variable in the way that finally got me to understand it as a 22-year-old woman. Remove that out of the way. So let's say that we have two variables. In this case, one of the variables is a flower. So number 1 equals flower. Okay, and our second variable is rain. When we're looking at dependent or independent variables, what we're looking for is what variable, so in this case flower and rain, depends on the other one, and which one could care less if the other one existed. So let's take a look. We have the flower and we have the rain. Does the flower depend on the rain to fall? Yes, it does, right? Because if the rain doesn't fall, the flower gets no water and then the flower withers and dies. Now let's look at the reverse. Does the rain depend on the flower being there for it to fall? No, the rain could care less whether there's a flower there or not. Look at the desert. Occasionally rain falls in the desert. There's no flowers. So the rain really doesn't care if there's a flower there. It's going to fall anyway. So that makes the rain independent because it really could care less about the flower's existence. And it makes the flower dependent because the flower is going to die if the rain doesn't fall. So the flower is dependent on the rain, whereas the rain could care less if the flower existed. So that's really how we look at dependent and independent variables. And I'll walk you through that a couple times in this chapter, looking at which one would not exist without the other and which one could care less the other one existed. Okay? That's how I remember that. Moving on. Last 2 vocab words for you guys to learn today. We're going to use these directly with our scatter plots. So the first word is linear. I've said it a couple times. I've said it actually quite a few times. Basically, every graph we have graphed since the beginning of this chapter is linear. If it's a straight line, right, if it does that, it's linear. I like to say there's the word line, see, in the word linear. That's how you remember. Linear means line. Specifically, a straight line, but that's linear. Nonlinear, obviously, is not a straight line. So anything that curves, does crazy loop-de-loops, anything crazy that does not mean straight line is a non-linear graph. Okay, so we're going to use that as we do our scatter plots today. So we're going to be finding what's called association, which is basically that comparison. So if something is associated with something else, then it is connected to that thing in some way, right? You could be like, oh, so-and-so is associated with so-and-so, right? Sam is associated with Trevor. Sam and Trevor know each other. That's all that's saying. It's a fancy term. So we're going to be looking at association. How do these 2 sets of data know each other? So we're going to look at this first one together, and then I'm going to have you answer questions for the rest of them as we go along. So this first one, if we look at the trend of the data, all the points seem to be going up, right? And if we go to our vocab, if everything is going up, that means that we are increasing, aka positive. So this has a positive association. But we're going to add another word to it. Not only is it a positive association, but specifically, I can, starting at 0, draw a straight line through my data, right through the middle. It doesn't have to start at 0. It's just, can I draw a line straight through the middle of my data? If I can draw a straight line right through the middle, then that makes it a linear association. So this has a positive linear association. Please do not abbreviate association. You know why, don't laugh. Okay, let's look at this next one. What do all the dots seem to be doing? What is the trend of the dots? Okay, hopefully you said the dots all seem like they're going down because they are all decreasing. So that makes this a negative association. Not just that, but I can draw a straight line right through the middle, which makes this a negative linear association. Okay? Moving on to the next one. What is the trend of the data? Now, you may have stared at that question for quite some time and been like, I don't see one. That's because there isn't one, right? These dots are not going up, they're not going down, they're just kind of existing all over the graph in random places. This is a graph that we call no association, right? I could draw a line through it, making it linear, but I could also draw a nice curve. I could draw a loop-de-loop if I wanted. They're not following any specific trend, so this has no association. So some data that may not make sense is probably why we created a graph with no association. For instance, if I polled a whole bunch of people and asked them, how many cars do you have? And how many shoes do you have? Do cars and shoes have anything to do with each other? No, they have nothing to do with each other, meaning they would most likely produce a graph that had absolutely no association because it doesn't matter how many cars you have and how many shoes you have. There's no connection. Okay, I know the video is going a little long. Bear with me. 3 more graphs. Okay, so our next graph, let's see if you guys can tell me, what is the trend? Positive or negative? If you said negative, you are correct. My dots all appear to be going down. Okay, so this is going to be a negative association. Now, could I draw a line straight through the middle, a straight line straight through the middle of my dots? Hopefully you said no, right? Because if I was to draw a straight line, like the dashed line here is gonna, that doesn't really hit all the points. It doesn't really follow what the points are doing. But if I took a curved line, I could draw that right through the middle of all my dots. So this one is not a straight line, it is a non-linear. So negative, non-linear. Okay, on to our next one. What is the trend? Positive, negative, or no trend? If you said negative, you'd be correct. Again, my dots appear to be going down. So this is a negative association. And then, just to save on time, I can draw a line straight through the middle of all my points. So this is a negative, non-linear association. But we have one more word to learn. Actually, we have 2 more words to learn. I know, a lot of words. The new word is called an outlier, and you may have noticed him. So an outlier is this little point right here that is off doing his own thing. He's just like, I don't comply to any kind of trend. I do my own thing. He's hipster. No trends, anti-trends. Okay, so this association is negative, nonlinear with outliers. Basically, we try to make the association description as descriptive as humanly possible. So I now know that my association is going down. Oh wait, this is linear, sorry. I could draw a straight line, so it's linear. Pay no attention. I now know that my line, my association, so my dots, are trending down. They are trending in a straight line. And then there are a couple outliers doing their own cool little party on the side. Okay? One more, here we go. This guy right here, if you guys noticed, is going up. Up, 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 which means it's increasing, making this a positive association. And then if we take a look at it, I can in fact draw a straight line through the middle of my points, making this a positive linear association. But do you notice these like balls of points? Those balls of points are what we call clusters. Kind of like nut clusters, right? It's a cluster of nuts. Ha 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 ha. I'm not funny. It's okay. Positive linear with clusters. So what this tells me, I won't even have to see the graph. If someone told me, oh, it's positive linear with clusters, I know that the dots are all trending up. I know that they're trending up in generally a straight line. And I know that there's a whole bunch of data that it's very similar, and so it's clustering in little balls like this. Okay? So I would recommend writing this down. There is this specifically also on the lesson all written for you. So if you don't want to pause the video, then feel free to just write that down. So a little bit of a longer lesson today, but the problems are going to be super easy. It's just one quick little vocab quiz and then looking back at your scatter plots from the last lesson. And that's it. Should be nice and quick. So Have a good day, everybody, and I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye.